Hey up! Right, last week before, I made the comparison on the Shotgun 650 and compared it with the Super Meteor 650 because I thought that's what everybody would want to know. But on publishing that video, everybody wanted a comparison between the Shotgun 650 and the Interceptor 650. This is my last day with the shotgun. I've had it for just over a month. It's going back this afternoon. So I thought I'd better get on with that. Right, before we get started proper, please leave a like if you enjoy this video. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. Apparently 70 to 80% of the people that watch my videos are not subscribers. The people that are just finding my videos through the normal feed on YouTube. It really helps me out if you subscribe to the channel. It helps the channel move along and move up the ranks. Now, while we're on the subject of subscriptions, I'm still getting complaints from people daily that they're being unsubscribed from the channel on a weekly basis. I've got no idea why this happens. It's just something that happens on YouTube. I think it's got something to do with when they update certain parts of the software on the platform as a whole. It puts people's accounts back to default on certain channels. So please, if you are a subscriber, check that your subscription, if you like, has stuck so that you continue to be a subscriber and you're informed whenever I upload a new video. Thanks very much. Let's start off with the bullet. 10 years ago, if anyone mentioned the Royal Enfield name, those that knew the Royal Enfield name would think of the bullet and the bullet-derived models. Royal Enfield wanted to make that break into Western motorcycling territory, and the bullet was too long in the tooth, considered underpowered, perhaps a bit agricultural. So they needed to come up with something a little bit more mainstream. Enter the Continental GT 650 and the Interceptor 650. Now, according to Siddhartha Lal in a pre-launch interview that I watched many years ago, the original concept of this project was to bring in a new Continental GT that was worthy of the name, a 650cc twin-cylinder motor. But the thought, while they were at it, why not bring a more general-purpose roadster out at the same time? And that's where the Interceptor 650 came in. The name is taken from the late 1960s Interceptor, which originally was an off-road competition bike intended for the US market. It was introduced and didn't do very well in its first year because it didn't have lights and all the accoutrements required for use on the road. So in its second year of production, they included a model with a road kit. And the Interceptor took off because not only was it a very worthy desert sled, it was also a good bike for the road, a general purpose roadster. The new Interceptor builds on that. It's a really nice bike, but it's a modern classic. It's a bike like your dad had, or your granddad had, or maybe if you're old enough, you even had yourself. And in that respect, compared to the Shotgun, it's a little bit primitive, as bikes were back in the 1960s. The suspension out of the box isn't the best in the world, although it's adequate, and it does benefit from some upgrades, as you've seen me do with this bike over the last 5 years. Equipment-wise, it's what you would expect from a 1960s or even a 1970s motorcycle. A speedo, a rev counter, with the addition of a trip meter and, you know, something that everybody was always screaming out for, a fuel gauge. Other than that, it's a very basic motorcycle, a basic roadster. It fits into the general roadster niche well. It's a good commuter, it's a good day-to-day hack, but it also makes a really good touring motorcycle. The only thing that limits that with luggage carrying capacity is the upswept exhausts at the back, although I believe there are some kits out there now that can address that. What it boils down to is whether you want a modern classic or you want something a little bit more contemporary with today's motorcycles. If you're after a modern classic, the Interceptor is the bike to go for. It looks the part. It's a lovely looking bike. It's a perfect modern classic, not too big, not too small. What Royal Enfield did with the Interceptor 650 is a very competent exercise in motorcycling nostalgia. They've grafted the 1960s aesthetics of a motorcycle and the riding experience of a 1960s motorcycle with modern engineering to give you the best of both worlds. This is a difficult recipe to get right, and so many other motorcycle manufacturers get it wrong, adding too many bells and too many whistles to these bikes. And even though compared to my bike, which is 5 years old now, Royal Enfield have slightly upgraded some of the parts on the current Interceptor, but they've still managed not to go too far with the upgrades. A modern classic motorcycle should be a reintroduction to better times, simpler times. Motorcycles are all about escapism, and as far as I'm concerned, the Interceptor 650 is the king of nostalgic escapism. It's a comfortable, sweet handling motorcycle with more than enough power for your average rider, competent and light in city traffic, nimble and safe on the back roads, and stable with legs long enough to be a competent tourer. If the Interceptor was an ice cream flavour, I would say that she's vanilla, which sounds boring. But it's not that synthetic vanilla that we have to put up with ice cream these days. It's the original organic vanilla that we used to enjoy, rich and smooth. In the Indian home market for Royal Enfield, the Bullet had a cult status for decades. The Bullet was a machine that was passed down from grandfather to father to son. They became family heirlooms, and it was always expected that a new Bullet should be pretty much the same as an old Bullet. And to that end, Royal Enfield could never really mess with it. They weren't allowed to. And I've got to wonder over the years how many times the boffins at Royal Enfield have been on the verge of pushing the button on something like the shotgun, but didn't because they were frightened to. They were frightened because of, what the customer reaction would be. I think the Interceptor and the Continental GT and all the various other models had to be introduced first before Royal Enfield could dip the toes in something like the shotgun, because the shotgun is the modern day version of what the Bullet would have become if it had been allowed to develop over the decades in the same way that other vehicle manufacturers have been able to develop their products. They had to leave this until last. They had to allow the customers in India to get used to the idea that Royal Enfield is now building different bikes. But I believe that the Shotgun 650, the 21st century Royal Enfield Bullet, was a bike well worth waiting for. "2023 was without a doubt the year of Royal Enfield's contemporary design of motorcycles. The Shotgun is a clear example of what happens when you take away the traditional constraints from your motorcycle designers and let them build what they want to build, whilst still at the same time being sympathetic to Royal Enfield's own history. Since the Interceptor and the Continental GT, the design team at Royal Enfield have come along in leaps and bounds. They've clearly learned a lot of lessons and progressed to a level I'd wager a lot of Royal Enfield fans never thought would happen, with some no doubt wishing that it would never happen. Mint and chocolate are two flavours that just don't go together. It's wrong. It's an abomination against taste. In fact, my personal view is that mint should be banned altogether in anything other than toothpaste. And I see the Shotgun 650 as being sort of mint chocolate chip flavour. It doesn't work for a lot of people, but for some, the combination is one made in heaven. The Shotgun fills the same roadster role as the Interceptor 650, but without the classic connotations. It's a modern, bang-up-to-date bike. It builds on top of everything that the Interceptor 650 started, but with some added bits and pieces. A basic navigation device, an economy indicator, and even a gear position indicator. It's built like a tank with minimal plastic components, and the whole thing has a tighter, more sophisticated feel to it. But that difference between the two bikes is okay, because that's how it's meant to be. The Interceptor is a blast from the past, a symbol of a bygone era, and that's what it represents. That's what you expect from it. The Shotgun, on the other hand, has none of those criteria restraining it, so it's allowed to be a modern motorcycle. A tight, rigid chassis, superior front suspension, with noticeably sharper and quicker handling characteristics. But it's still a basic sit-up and beg riding stance, which means that this bike is a general purpose bike, a roadster, just like the Interceptor. It can do or fulfill all the same roles. And if I'm totally honest, it does it all better than the Interceptor, but with those changes has come a difference in character. It doesn't have the same character and personality that the Interceptor has. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. It depends entirely on your mindset. Both are pure motorcyclists' motorcycles, but from a different viewpoint. If I'm completely honest, and I had to make a decision as to which was the best motorcycle between the Shotgun 650 and the Interceptor 650, I would have to choose the Shotgun. The Shotgun is hands down a better bike than the Interceptor 650, but at the same time, it doesn't have the same personality that the Interceptor 650 has. It's a more primitive machine from a more primitive era. This is the bike that your dad rode or your granddad rode, or if you're old enough, maybe you rode back in the late 1960s. And if your pursuance of motorcycle is to recapture something from a bygone era, and there's nothing wrong with that, the Interceptor is definitely the bike to go for. The suspension is a little bit more primitive, but that can be sorted out with aftermarket upgrades. It's a sweet handling, powerful machine capable of travelling well in excess of 100 miles an hour, if that's really what you want to do. And in every other respect, it's a thoroughly endearing motorcycle. The Shotgun is the same, but different. It's a much better sorted machine. It handles slightly better than the Interceptor, and that's no doubt down to, another 5 years of development since the Interceptor was introduced, and the introduction of some more sophisticated suspension, especially the shower upside down forks at the front end. It's also got some additional equipment, a USB charger if you really want that sort of thing. And it's also equipped with the Tripper satellite navigation system. It's got more premium upgrades on the switchgear and the levers. It's a tighter, better sorted package. And I can't believe I'm saying that, because I do love the Interceptor. Now, the thing is, you need to decide what you want from a motorcycle. If you want something that out of the box isn't perfect, which, let's face it, that's what the Interceptor is, but will lean well into being a bike that can be fettled over the years, that's something I get a lot of enjoyment from. Yeah, the Interceptor is a great bike to go for. The Shotgun, on the other hand, out of the box, is a much better, more complete machine. There's no need to mess with it if you don't want to. It still fits into the general purpose roadster niche. In that respect, both bikes are the same. But the Shotgun does it better. Both will tour, both will commute, both will serve as backroad scratchers, daily hacks. Both will do it really well, but without modification, the Shotgun does those things better out of the box. If you're purely looking for the best possible machine, you're not interested in upgrading, yeah, the Shotgun is the bike to go for. Thank you so much for supporting this channel by watching this and my other videos. If you'd like to support me in other ways, you can do that via the Patreon page or via the Super Thanks button down below. I am, of course, going to be back later in the week, so until then, if you're riding, please ride safely, and I'll see you soon.